The Boston Red Sox come to Baltimore, sort of floundering, if that's possible, being a couple of games out, but three-team race in the American League East. This guy has seen many a pennant race and certainly was a big part of one of the stories over the weekend, one of the sad stories at ESPN and the loss of John Saunders, who I got to know as a young scribe here in the 1980s when he worked at Channel 2. He is Bob Ryan, longtime sports columnist. I call him a Boston Globe legend, but I'm sure he'll poo-poo the legendary status. But it's always great to check in with you, Bob. How's life there in sort of semi-kind of retirement, but still being relevant up there in Boston?
Well, I'm in year 5, and it's going the way I hoped it would, I must say. I'm good busy, and I wanted flexibility so that I picked and choose what I do, and if something came up, my wife and I could just do it. We don't have to worry about consulting with a boss. I have no boss in any way. I have responsibilities. I've assumed that's it. So I'm in good shape. Thank you very much.
So nobody is sending you to Rio and making you go down there for 4 weeks or whatever?
No, I have very mixed feelings about the Olympics. I love the Olympics. I'm on record strongly as being a big Olympic booster, but not this time. And I think we're finding out the reasons why. The Ryan Lochte incident and the swimming pool. It was not one thing; it's another thing. You haven't heard all the other stories about individuals' problems that people are having, and it's just an unfortunate circumstance because the competition has been spectacular. We've got so much great stuff to talk about, obviously, with the competition, but it's not the whole story of Rio.
Well, look, man, I sit here in Baltimore as the guy who had my press credential taken away by the baseball owner after 21 years, and no one mentions the stench underneath of first place or second place or third place or how you got there. And, that's kind of the sausage world we live in. No one wants to know how it's made, right? They just want the Olympics delivered. But you're in a city that spent millions of dollars trying to lure an Olympics, only to sort of find out how corrupt the whole thing is, right?
Yeah, it's partially, but I think that people here were amateurs, bunglers, did not have a full grasp of what they were doing, because I firmly believe that Boston would have been a fabulous site for the Olympics because physically, geographically speaking, we have what it takes. And what it takes for a successful Olympics for people when they aren't going to events, you take for granted. You should take for granted. It doesn't work that way, of course, and it hasn't worked that way in Rio, but with the swimming pool is Exhibit A. But you should take for granted that the venues are going to be fine. Hopefully, they won't be too spread out, and then if they are, and that your transportation will work. But you have to take for granted that the venues are going to be fine. But people have off hours, and what makes the Olympics and what makes the city come alive for those 3 weeks is having what I call gathering places for people, and we have them. We would have had a wonderful festive atmosphere, but I mean, they bungled it here from start to finish, and no one should have to pay what people have been paying that was put on the Olympics the last few years. Part of that is self-inflicted wounds, such as Sochi, $50 billion for a Winter Olympics is beyond preposterous, and it continues. Nestor, keeps going on because now we have a circumstance coming up down the road where Beijing is going to try to pretend that it's a winter town and it's really a summer town because we just had a flip side of that, and of course with Sochi just the opposite. There's so much wrong with it, but it can be good. I'm telling you, it can be good, and there's a right and a wrong way to do it.
Well, it's much like FIFA. There's sort of no lords over the realm, right? There's no government that is in line with this. It's a bunch of governments sending, let's be honest, corrupt people with empty envelopes wanting to get cash. I mean, the stories I've read the last 3 years, these are the 2 biggest sporting events. I mean, Super Bowl aside or, Euro or whatever, but just international sporting events on this planet of our lifetime, and they're both so stenchily corrupt that guys like you have to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, who will?
And, of course, the last 2 big such competitions have gone to the same country at a time when it can ill afford to put them on. Brazil took on this dual burden of putting on a World Cup and an Olympics at a time when they thought that everything was rosy. The economic situation was the best it had ever been. The future was wonderful. Well, that was 7 years ago. 7 very short years ago, I might add, in the world scheme of things. And look what's happened. And they're going to pay a price for their foolishness and exuberance for decades and maybe a century to come as a result of it. So look, there is a solution to cut the costs, to bring some sanity into it. Everyone has written, so many people have written about it, but no one wants to implement it, and that is, of course, one site, a winter site and a summer site. And a summer site, pick one. Say Athens, fine. You give them all the support they need. Great. I mean, that would help solve this problem. I'm not sure where the winter site should be, but we can have that discussion later.
He is Bob Ryan. He is the columnist emeritus from the Boston Globe, many, many years there, and, of course, on ESPN, the sports reporters, as you probably know him. I know him from running around the Super Bowls and World Series and all these great sporting events and being a jovial guy and nice enough to come on and spend some time with us. I know John Saunders the same way. I got to tell you, Bob, back in 1984 at the old Baltimore News America, where I know you knew John Stedman amongst many others, I was, the kid running to get coffee and copy and any sandwiches, anything else. But they gave me the assignment to call sports reporters in 1984, long before Dick Schaap had the TV show, and, to get 3 quotes off of a piece of news from the night. And inevitably, I wound up on the phone, sometimes with Chris Berman or Tom Nees in Bristol, Connecticut, sometimes with John Saunders over in York Road here in Baltimore, because he was the weekend guy and the weekday guy with Scott Garceau many years ago. I knew him for 30 years, and I would run into him maybe every 3 or 4 years at a Super Bowl or here or there. Remembered me, was always, and then it was part of the comfort. You were part of that. Mitch Albom, Lupic, all those guys on Sunday mornings that I watched for years and years with Dick and Jeremy and John Saunders. But John Saunders, I can't think of a more impeccable human being from guys like us that are around him as far as how people were treated when they were in the company of John Saunders.
He was genuine and unpretentious. It's just that simple. And he knew he was good, and he was damn good. The duality of John Saunders is that when he passed, there was this extreme outpouring of grief on a personal basis, both from the people who actually did know him, particularly the people inside the company, ESPN, but the public at large, who always felt comfortable in his television presence in a way that they don't feel comfortable with a lot of other people. But they just did. They sensed a genuineness, and I can vouch for that. He had charm. He had accessibility. He had warmth. He had whatever it is that not everyone has that in front of a camera. He had it, and so we knew John in a very strong personal way as a really, really good guy. But he was extremely talented, and this is a huge loss. It's a huge personal loss for anyone who had any social or business contact with him. But it's a huge loss for ESPN because really his versatility was unmatched. It was unexceeded. I won't say unmatched, maybe, but unexceeded. No one had more television chops than John Saunders.
Yeah, and he had a Baltimore thing here that he always remembered the Baltimore guys, and I think he knew he made his way, and I saw him at hockey games a lot because I go to hockey games, and I know you do as well. Bob Ryan joining us here, columnist emeritus at the Boston Globe, and I guess this is Red Sox Orioles. We're having something we haven't experienced here in a generation, Bob, and that's a pennant race. The Red Sox are coming in. This is legitimately, we have no idea how this is going to turn out with these 3 teams. Hey, all 3 teams might wind up making the playoffs at this point, given where these other teams are in the Central and the West. But this has been a kind of a choppy run for the Red Sox, and I'm not getting the vibe that anybody up there really believes in the 16 Red Sox right now.
It's a very human team, and that is deeply flawed. It's got great strengths, one of which was on display yesterday. Mookie Betts is this season anyway. Is one of the top 10 players in baseball. Perhaps this season one of the top 5. Perhaps a prime MVP candidate. And so he's a terrific player. He had 3 home runs yesterday, drove in 8 runs. His second 3 home run game of the year. The first one, of course, was against the Orioles. They have hit and won in lopsided games. They have all these great offensive credentials, but they're atrocious in one-run games. Their situational hitting in close games is terrible. Their pitching is highly suspect. In a total scheme of things, the guy who pitched yesterday, Porcello, is having he's a Cy Young candidate year. He's 16-3 now. His ERA is dropping close to 3. He's pitched very well for them, but they do have pitching issues. David Price has been far from a Cy Young guy this year, and they're paying him $30 million a year. They just had Stephen Wright, who was in the All-Star game, put on the DL yesterday, and I don't know if you know how he got hurt, but they were shorthanded and had to put him in as a pinch runner, and he was deked back into second base by a fake, and he went in head first and hurt his shoulder. Of course, I'm a extreme nutcase detractor of head first slides. I think they should be absolutely taken out of the game. But anyway, their pitching is suspect. They're flawed, but so are your Orioles. Have they hit another triple? By the way,
I saw the story. I had the guy on last week, the sort of the sports nerd dude, Eric Eisenberg, that wrote the story that they're the slowest team in the history of Major League Baseball for triples, for stealing bases, for taking extra bases. That's an unbelievable stat. But, hey, Bob, we played the Giants over the weekend. They've got like 4 guys in double digits for home runs. Their leader is 14. The Orioles have 6 guys who have more than 14 home runs. I mean, it's a different kind of baseball, the American and the National League play, and especially the American League East, where it really is about how many guys do you have that are going to hit 35 home runs.
Well, the Orioles, of course, it's historic. You might as well embrace it, Nestor. You might as well embrace the anomalous nature of this thing and have some fun with it, and try to win with this ridiculously lopsided team.
Well, we've called it beer league softball. That's kind of reminds me of like Eddie Feigner. You know what I mean?
This is kind of like half of Earl's theory. Pitching, or 1/3 of it, pitching defense and 3-run homers. Well, I'm not sure about the pitching overall, although certainly there's been some great surprises there. But and Britain's having an historic closer year. I understand that. But the 3-run homer is what Earl lived by and what Earl preached, and it still lives. That's for sure. And I give Dan Duquette full credit for he mines the yard sales better than any general manager in baseball. Everybody could have had Nestor Cruz. Everybody could have had Trumbo. Anybody could have had Trumbo. He was there for the taking. It was low-hanging fruit for anybody. Well, though Duquette took him. Look what you got. I mean, imagine if you put him in the Red Sox in left field and left them there with what they got. But that's the way it is. So, no, they're flawed. Toronto's flawed. A similar team in terms of offensive, capability, and they've got a Cy Young guy in Happ. The Red Sox, I mean, you're right. It could come down. I think it comes down to the final weekend. They're all flawed. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. But Dan Shaughnessy wrote a column today, as only Shaughnessy would, in a 16-2 game yesterday, saying how nervous this team makes him. But he's pointing out what I was just telling you about the fact that they win lopsided games, split softball games, but they don't win playoff October baseball games. So I would rate them as third in this pecking order for the chance to really do something serious in October.
It's funny because I thought they won the trading deadline. I thought when they dealt for Pomerantz, I thought that they had a difference maker there. Certainly that hasn't been the case. Now Wright goes to the DL. It hasn't been for lack of trying for Dombrowski. No.
Oh my God, no. Dombrowski, he's not a laissez-faire GM, and he's dealt away some of their prospects and got people. He dealt away an 18-year-old phenom named Anderson Espinoza to get Pomerantz. And they were touting Espinoza to us since the time I signed him, and now they let him go. He's not afraid to. He wants proven quantities over hope for the future. There's no question. Now he'll look for his waiver time comes soon. You can expand the rosters. Who knows what he's going to do. But it's going to be fun. I mean, when you have flawed teams, you have a wide range of emotions following them. They had a spectacular May, pounded the ball all over creation. Yesterday was this weekend series. They had a 9-run game and a 16-run game that looks like they're coming back to it now. But they've got, I don't know if you're aware, but your Orioles trip is in the middle of 4 games in 5 days in 4 cities, and includes a back-to-back night-day later in the week. So they've got a crazy week with the schedule. I mean, they got to play with the hand you're dealt, but it's a pretty crappy one.
Well, when you got to go make these games up, the Orioles had to get on a plane and go to Minnesota and make up one game a couple Thursdays ago, and that's this interleague play with you. I mean, my wife said the Red Sox and the Orioles are playing 2 games on Tuesday. When's the last time the Orioles and the Red Sox played a 2-game series?
Once in a while. That is scheduled now. With interleague play and all, and it's crazy. I hate interleague play. It's stupid. I mean, it's just not needed. It doesn't enhance anything. It complicates the schedule. It makes it's destroyed the All-Star game. It's practically taken mystique out of the World Series. I mean, it used to be the great unknown, the mystery. Oh, we're going to see those other guys finally. No, it's run its course, but they won't. They're too stubborn. Sports entities are too stubborn to admit when they make dumb mistakes. Look at the NBA. 30 years, David Stern, made a mistake. He went 2-3-2 in the finals. When 2-2-1-1-1 was what God. That's the 11th commandment. Did you know that? The 11th commandment is thou shalt go 2-2-1-1-1, and they violated that. And finally they woke up and got smart again. And baseball someday is going to realize that interleague play sucks.
He is Bob Ryan, outspoken as always, columnist emeritus, but plenty on his mind at the Boston Globe. And, of course, talking about the life and times of John Saunders. He wrote a great column about John. You can go check that out at Globe Bob Ryan out on Twitter. I want to bring it back to the Orioles here. You came in here for many years when the Orioles were the big banana back in the 90s. And then you spent 15 years coming in here, much like all of my wife's relatives from Manchester, New Hampshire, just taking the city over. There are 45,000 people in Red Sox gear at cameras. The fact that Buck Showalter, A, took this job 5 years ago, and then Dan Duquette somehow got pulled off out of the Cape Cod League because no one would come and work for this clown who owns the team here. And now, obviously he's suing Major League Baseball. He's suing the Nationals. It cost us the All-Star game here 4 weeks ago, but nobody seems to notice here, and sort of journalism has become dead in our market here, Bob. No one asks questions anymore because they all are employed by Mr. Angelos or intimidated by Mr. Angelos. But I tell you what, Duquette has done something I don't think even guys like you that had some respect for him 15 years ago would have done. We call him dumpster dive, Dan. You call it yard sale or whatever. And then Buck Showalter with this sort of renaissance act that, on his fifth team to take a bunch of ragamuffins and turn an organization that no one wanted to manage. I mean, Girardi, Valentine, they all turned the job down. He came in and has somehow made it work. I mean, Buck has some magic power going on here.
Well, Buck, I'm happy for Buck, and if the Orioles are the team that emerge in the American League East, I'll be happy for Buck because he's twice led horses through the water. You know that. They didn't get the drink, first in New York in '95 and then in Arizona. And so I have no problem ever rooting for Buck. And Dan's problem was self-created management issues, not his baseball acumen. But, he ran an organization of terror in Boston and really made some horrible human mistakes and was despised by many people in the organization. And I only like to think that he's learned from his mistakes. I think he went back and reflected. I think he's a different person. I think he treats people much better top to bottom. There was no one in the organization who didn't fear him in Boston. It was just an amazing thing. I mean, and he does, to my knowledge, he doesn't do that anymore. And thank God, because it will overshadow the fact that he's a smart man who's a good baseball guy. The partnership seems to be working very well. And despite the owner. And yes, the owner, it's just like all those years with the Clippers. Funny how the Clippers started to get good when they got rid of the owner. But the Orioles are still working with that burden. I understand that. They have to circumvent that. But they got two people in place who are able to do it right now. And lucky for the fans. I love the Baltimore franchise. I love
Yeah, I miss it too.
Stadium. I loved I just liked the whole atmosphere, and of course, the ballpark. Thank God, thanks to Janet Marie Smith, changed everything in baseball, sports architecture, and it's still the model for any stadium that's ever going to be built, and it's still the mecca for me for the best baseball venue to see a game. You can't invent the warehouse.
Well,
They didn't. Some people wanted to tear it down, and of course, it turns out to be the backbone of the whole damn, real estate.
Well, for 25 years now going, and I tell you what, it feels like 25 years Big Papi's been up there. This is looking like the end of the run. We scream juice, PEDs, ripped out phones. We have all sorts of things that Oriole fans would scream at David Ortiz. I will say this: last year on my 30-30 tour, I went to 30 ballparks in 30 days for the bone marrow registry for leukemia. He was the nicest player to, come up to me in any way. So I have a nice warm vibe for Big Papi. I know in Boston there's this incredibly legendary status, but there's this exclamation point he wants to put on, and he certainly has done that on a personal level this year. I mean, this will be the greatest last year of any player ever, certainly of that age, if you look at the statistics. What are you going to write about him when he tips his cap for the last time?
Wow, that's a good question. Hopefully something different than somebody else will write, but I don't know how wide the range of possibilities are. You've just identified statistically it's going to be the most statistically laden farewell tour in the history of Major League Baseball. It's going to rank up with any last seasons in the history of American and North American team sport that I know of. I guess the two standards are, in general terms, would be Jim Brown, because he quit at age 29, having yet another rushing title, to become an actor, and decided he had enough of football and wanted his body to stay nice and safe. And Sandy Koufax, who quit at 30 on a 27-9 Cy Young year, but that was because his arm, he had blown his arm out with and we didn't have modern medical technology. but no 40-year-olds ever put up a production like this. Ted Williams had hit 316, hit a home run his last time up, had 29 homers, but he only had 72 ribbies. Poppy's got 90 ribbies now, so that's he's going to blow. He's already blown past Ted in that one. Look, as far as the PED is concerned, I have no idea what happened to put his name on that list. He's playing Mickey the Dunce. He keeps saying he doesn't know any idea why he's on that list. All I know is this: he gets tested now, folks. Don't think for 1 second that PEDs have anything to do with what's going on now. He's just a remarkable hitter who has, he's an odd man out. He's just completely different and better than the next million guys you're going to meet. The only question is, will he get in the Hall of Fame? And there's two things working against him. The first is some people will take the PED thing into consideration. Far more important is the DH thing. And if you look at Edgar Martinez's DH, his Hall of Fame numbers, they're going backwards, not forwards. And that doesn't bode well for Poppy when that voting time comes.
That's kind of amazing, right? I mean, it's a position. It's kind of like Ray Guy is a punter, right? It's a position. Why would it not be honored? And look, I never saw a better hitter than Edgar Martinez, right?
Yeah, well, he was the best. He was the most feared, respected right-hand hitter in the American League for a 10-year period. And 4.1 something lifetime OBP. I mean, unquestioned. Anybody who played against him knows it. The whole era knows it. But it's those National League voters that they don't. I have to blame the National League guys. It can't be the American League guys. It can't be. It's got to be. You figure half the voting body's got to be National League guys, and they don't respect the DH. And that's that. And Edgar's going backwards. So don't think Poppy's an automatic with all his home runs, all his accomplishments. The one thing that's going to be so hard for them to refute is his post-game resume. It's extraordinary, as you well know. That's postseason, I mean.
You know what? You're not out of things to write about up there. At some point, Garoppolo is going to lead the Patriots.
He's under great scrutiny. He had a so-so first game. Some good, some bad. They think they got going for them in this 4-game suspension. This is schedule. They have 3 at home. They're at Arizona. Well, that's going to be tough anyway. So they could easily lose that game. But I look for 2-2. And if they're 2-2, you know that will put them right in the thick of the race. And here comes Brady. And you look for the silver lining, which is that's 4 games he won't get battered. 4 games to save him, rest him up. This is not a catastrophe, and it's an opportunity for them to find out what do they have here, because this is the 3rd year for Garoppolo, rookie contract up, all that. Do they have a guy that people would trade for? Do they have a guy you could trade for a first or second round pick, or is he the guy if Brady ever decides to quit? So they're going to have a chance to make some judgments here.
Love you, Bob Ryan. Always appreciate your work. Love seeing you pop up on my television. Certainly love seeing you pop up on a radio show and on what we do here at WNST. Keep the faith up there. Keep the great work coming. I'm following you out on Twitter, pal.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
You got it, Bob Ryan, Globe Bob Ryan, out on Twitter, sports columnist emeritus for the Boston Globe, and getting us ready for the Red Sox and the Orioles, as well as, well, there's never a bad day to have Bob Ryan on your radio show. I'm just being honest. You can find me out in the Bayou, Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. You can email me anytime, nasty@WNST.net, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook Live, as well as our WNSTV YouTube channel. And anything you miss comes to you in the morning newspaper each and every morning at 7 a.m. It delivers to your email inbox digitally, free of charge, and powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. Last but never least, any breaking news that happens. Orioles, Ravens, signings, comings, goings, injuries, sadly, yes, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here driving you home from 3 until 5 with the SSV on WNST this Thursday. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.